So funny, this morning, I'm just minding my own business, sitting on my lanai. That's the fancy word that we call
I
patios
I
in
watched
Florida.
the Golden Girls, thank you.
And I was drinking my coffee, flipping through Instagram, and I clicked on what I thought was a video of you. And I almost spit my coffee out when you said my name. It was on Instagram Live. I didn't even know that was live. That's so grandma-y, isn't it? Where I'm like, oh my God, he's talking to me. So
Can
I
you
had no
see
idea that
me?
was live. I was closing my robe. Isn't this the highlight of your day coming on my podcast?
It is. It is.
Oh my
The
God.
6 hours I sat on the set this morning were definitely not a highlight.
Welcome to the Disruptors Creed podcast. I'm your host, Kristen Zeman, and I am shocked you are here. In this weekly podcast, I delve into the essence of being a disruptor, an individual who dares to view the world through a lens of possibility rather than limitation. Today, I have the privilege of sitting down with an absolute powerhouse in journalism, Sean Lewis. If you live in Chicago, you know him as the award-winning journalist and anchor of WGN Weekend Morning News. But beyond the news desk, Sean is a storyteller in the truest sense of the word, taking headlines and turning them into narratives that inform, connect, and most importantly, make people feel something. Sean has built a reputation as a reporter who isn't afraid to ask tough questions or challenge the traditional playbook of the industry. I know this because I've been on the receiving end of those questions. And that's exactly why I consider him a disruptor, someone who isn't just reporting the news, but reshaping the way we engage with it. So today we're going beyond the headlines and we're going to talk about your approach to storytelling, state of journalism, and what it takes to truly capture the heart of a story. So Sean, welcome to the podcast.
Kristen, Chief, it's an honor. And what an intro.
Powerhouse, I could think of no better word than to describe you. Everybody knows who you are in the Chicago area. You're famous, famous. So, okay, let's talk. Yes, infamous as well. Your career, you have been with GN since what year?
Let's see. GN, I've been in Chicago since 2007. In fact, today, no, next Wednesday is my 18-year anniversary.
Oh my gosh, if it was today, I was going to feel terrible that we didn't have champagne to toast, but okay, all right.
I
I'm
have
glad you
some in the
screwed that
fridge.
up.
I'll go grab it.
Okay, yeah, go get it. Yeah, it's Friday. It's the afternoon, so basically it's happy hour. It's
It
every
really
day's
is.
happy hour in Florida. But so your career has spanned multiple cities: Fargo, Madison, Richmond, Rockford, all before you
A
made your
lot of
way to
places.
Chicago. Yeah, so that's a pretty diverse mix of environments. So how did working in those different places shape the perspective that you have now and the way you see the world?
Yeah, you grow up. I grew up, really, my childhood also informs what I do, right? Because I grew up an only child in a single parent family. And it's interesting because I didn't really think about this part of my life until I got to Chicago. And this has only been in the last 5, 6, 7 years that I've actually put the words with what my childhood was, but my mom and I were homeless for several years during my childhood. And a lot of that has to do with circumstances of, she grew up in the 50s. She grew up and was raised to be a housewife, and that's what she was going to do. And it didn't work out. So she had to kind of move in a different direction. And she had to do that all while raising little me and go back to school and try to get a job. And all of these different things kind of came into play. The reason I didn't know that we were homeless is because we always had a place to go.
Hmm.
We lived with my grandparents for a few years. We lived with my aunt and uncle for a year. So I never thought in my head like, oh, we're homeless. It wasn't until I got to Chicago that everything kind of came together. I'm like, oh, we didn't have a home. Even though I never doubted love, right? And that's how I know that that is the key to success,
Yeah.
is to feel love and know that I was always loved. I never doubted my mom's love. I never doubted my family's love. And
Hmm.
that really helped out. But all of these circumstances in which you grow up kind of
Hmm.
inform how we go about our adult lives, right?
Yeah.
And how I approach stories and how I
Yeah.
show up at crime scenes and how I interact with people. All of that comes from those experiences when I was a kid growing up. And they kind of when I first started out, I wanted to be a TV reporter, and I'd
Yeah.
had wanted to do that since I was a little kid, like 7 years old. Um, when I got the chance in my first job in Fargo, I was talking like this, and I was a
Hmm.
TV reporter, and I was authoritative. I was 22 and I looked
Yeah.
15. There is no,
Totally.
I worked very hard for these gray hairs that I have here now. But all of these different experiences, you take a nugget from here and you learn along the way.
Yeah.
And that's the way TV news works, is that you kind of start in smaller markets. At least it
Hmm.
was back in my day. You started in smaller markets, you got the experience, you moved up into larger markets, and that's kind of how you went about building your career. And I got here, I was 31 when I got to Chicago, and that at the time was pretty young.
Yeah.
But now lots of people get to Chicago in their late 20s, and it's a kind of a normal thing now, because the state of TV, the state of news has changed a lot
Yeah.
in the almost 30 years that I've been working in it. And I've been
Yeah.
around it since I was a little kid, because my aunt was actually in TV news too.
Yeah. She was the one who inspired you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I,
I
I I
remember
lovingly say
this.
to her and my uncle, who was also in TV,
Uh-huh.
they met at the same TV station in Nebraska. I say, I blame you for my career,
Yeah. Right.
because they were in it during the golden years, right? And I've been
Yeah.
very fortunate to work with people who worked in TV during the golden years of TV news, and like the anchorman that you think of back in the 70s and 80s. And I know a lot of people who worked in TV news back then.
Hmm.
And I was kind of around it at that time when you only had three, four, five channels to choose from
Yep.
total.
Yeah.
And then when I started out, 97, you had maybe 100 channels to choose from, because some people had cable, other people still had those three, four, five channels. But we also
Yeah.
had VHS tapes, and you could record stuff and watch it later. You could go rent something from the video store. And now we've gotten into this world now where we literally have unlimited access to whatever we want to watch.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
So wait, I want to pull on something that you had said there, especially when you said that you were as young as 7, and then you knew that you wanted to be this. Then you entered the field, and you said you're just this young buck coming in, trying to emulate the way the reporters were on television. This is really important. I want to bring this up because one of the things that people love about you, myself included, is how real you are on camera. Whether you are out in the field reporting, breaking a news segment, or live streaming, or sitting at the anchor desk, you bring not only a sense of humor, but authenticity that makes people feel like they know you. So I imagine that that was an evolution of such as trying to
Mhm.
maintain the industry norm, because I suffered that in my career, what I call in policing, the mirrored sunglasses and attitude, trying to
Sure, I saw
emulate.
I saw that
Yeah.
video in which you were a trainee. I put that into that story I believe I did on you.
Yes, and I'm going to get to that. But it was an evolution for me to go, God, I don't have to act like that.
Yeah.
So how did you find your voice? Was it the culture of GN that helped you bring out the you? And how much of you on camera is the same as off camera?
So you see a lot of real me. Like, I am a goofball in real life. I say random things. My brain works in like weird ways where I make connections and then I say something, and only people who are in sync with me actually get it. Otherwise, it's just like, why did he just say that? So GN really has WGN, they kind of give you a lot of lead to be able to do you, right? And that comes out a lot in the morning show, both on the weekdays and on the weekends, which is where I usually am. But, I grew up kind of being a class clown.
Mhm.
And then that first job, I was really kind of like, I'm a reporter. Um,
Buttoned up.
Madison, I was still a reporter, and you kind of have to be a reporter. But I try to like put creativity into it. Uh, and then, like, when I got my first anchor job, which was in Rockford, Illinois, morning anchor, I kind of was able to put a little bit more of me into that. And then it was just an evolution from there. I was a weekend anchor in Richmond, and then I came back here to Chicago in 2007. It just kind of evolved. They restarted the weekend morning show. I was the only anchor. I was the only person besides the meteorologist.
Hmm.
So if something went wrong, I kind of had to like kind of make fun of it, and because otherwise, like, you have no one there to like go, "Hey, look what just happened." So you kind of have to. So being an only child really kind of helped with that because I was able to talk to myself because of that. It's just kind of an evolution of stuff, right? So
Yeah,
that's where it is, and you
that
kind
makes
of
sense to
put
me.
more and more. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's this your personality really comes through. And I know watching you through the years, and you should know that even though I have moved out of the Chicagoland area, I still can't quit WGN News because I just stream it every morning here because I'm still so vested.
Do you hear that,
So
boss? Yeah, Kristen still watches WGN online. Yes, we'll mark her down for one Nielsen point. Thank you.
that is right. And I was thinking though about the culture because when I flip back and forth to even news stations around here and I look at WGN, I think it's really important that we do give a lot of credit to those organizations who allow people to be their authentic selves. I have been trapped in a profession where we weren't really able to bring our true selves to our work. It's law enforcement. I mean, we are paramilitary, we dress the same, we have to look the same, we have to act the same. And I remember wanting to change that culture so much. And I just felt so stifled, like the walls were closing in on me. So I think that that really does lend credence to the idea of culture and those who really affect culture from the top, allowing people to be who they are. It makes your storytelling better. It makes you better at your job when you can be yourself.
Right. I think GN became what it is out of necessity because out of all of the newsrooms in Chicago, it was the independent one. It didn't have all the resources of a huge network behind it. It didn't have a big staff back in the early days. And you kind of had to be a little bit different, right? To grab
Yeah.
eyeballs.
Yeah.
And that just kind of grew out of there. And now we have, I think, one of the largest newsrooms in the market because we do so much news now. But that those little seeds that were planted in the 70s and 80s kind of grew from there and became the evolution of what you see today. And it's really important though because you bring your personality to it and you have lighthearted moments and you have a lot of fun, but then you also have to turn that key if something happens. And we have a lot of stuff happen in Chicago. One of them happened under your watch in Aurora, and that's how we got to know each other.
Yeah, for sure. And that's exactly what I was going to say is you can still bring a bit of fun to your job and not take yourself too serious, but knowing that when you have to cover a story that is tragic, that you have to put that game face on. And, that is part of the job. And so, first of all, before we leave this topic, has there ever been a time where you've had to pull back your personality for the sake of tradition or anyone told you to tone it down? Or have you just been uh, able to be your authentic self throughout your time at GN?
Now, there have been times when the boss pulled me into the office and said, why don't we bring it back a couple of clicks?
Sure.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Because there are
Okay.
times when it gets a little bit too much. Most of the time, no.
Yeah.
And it really all depends on who's sitting next to me, too, right?
Yeah.
And if we're both being a certain way, sometimes it becomes like a brother and sister having a little bit of a spat in the back seat. And then mom or dad says, hey, I'm going to pull this thing over. So do
Yeah.
you have some of those moments, right?
Yeah.
Talking about kind of having to flip that switch or turn the key.
Yeah.
One, I think if you were to ask my husband and really anyone who's close to me what story that really changed me, it was Highland Park,
Hmm.
the Fourth of July parade shooting.
Yeah.
Because I was dressed casually that day. I had a polo shirt on. It was Fourth of July. I was going to be covering like some random whatevers that day. Typically on a holiday, that's the way it is. And we were downtown, and our general manager happened to live in Highland Park and was at the parade and called the assignment desk less than a minute after those shots were fired in downtown Highland Park. And we got there probably 35 minutes after we got that call, and it was eerily quiet.
Yeah.
No one was out in the street, and we had to park about a mile and a half down the road at the firehouse, and then we walked to the scene. And it occurred to me several blocks into that walk with my photographer, and I said, "Hey, they don't have the shooter."
Yeah. Yeah.
And we
Still at
were
large.
walking basically by ourselves. We're like, if we hear shots, we need to figure always be on the lookout for where we're going to hide out. And we were the first on the air there. And we were there for 12 hours that day.
Yeah.
And you were just at the scene over and
Mhm.
over and over again, talking about what was supposed to be a very happy
Mhm.
incident
Mhm.
of people having a good time at a parade. And you see these toys and like lawn chairs, little lawn chairs for kids
Mhm.
just scattered all over the place because people just ran.
Yeah.
It's just, and those moments as a reporter, as a journalist, really kind of you try for it to get deleted out of your memory banks after you're done with the
Possible.
day, as much as possible. Same thing with being an officer, I'm sure. But
Yeah, and I
some
was gonna
things
say
stick with you.
there's a lot of parallels there in our beloved professions, and one of which is the search for the truth. Law enforcement are looking to solve the case, and and in doing so, you have to turn up rocks and find out what's underneath, and then find the next clue. I think that journalism is much of the same thing. We're both on a quest for the truth. That journey of finding the truth along the way, we are going to see some really horrific things and what mankind does to each other. And that's the hard stuff. How do you balance those personal emotions with your professional responsibilities? Because it doesn't go away. The stories do bleed together, at least the innocuous ones, but those big ones where you are front and center for that, I mean, how do you balance that?
When you find out, you let me know, and
Let's
just
bottle that up and sell
like
it.
police officers see even more than street reporters, and we come into situations kind of like different, right? Because officers arrive on the scene, and I've often said when I talk to groups or talk to people, like as a reporter, I meet people sometimes on the worst day of their lives, and police officers the same, right? And you have to have some empathy in those situations. You have to not lose that part of you to be able to either help those people as an officer or tell that person's story as a
Yes.
reporter.
Yeah. And what a responsibility.
If you lose that part of you, give it up.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a big responsibility to tell someone else's story. And that's really why I wanted to talk to you. I think that you disrupt the field when it comes to your storytelling. When you think about how there's data that we read, how many shootings there are, that does not resonate with people. What resonates with the people are the ones who are affected, the victims of those shootings. And I think what sets you apart isn't just your ability to deliver the news, it's the way that you bring humanity into every story. And I'm grateful to have gotten a glimpse as to how you've developed that empathy. But it's whether you're covering breaking news, social issues, or moments that define the city, you have this ability to make people stop what they are doing and to pay attention. And I have to tell you, I've been on the receiving end. And just personally, you've interviewed me a couple major milestones in my career. Number one was our mass shooting, worst
Yeah.
day of my professional career. You interviewed me when I retired, and you walked into my office and all the cameras got set up, and I thought, this is a breeze. This is nothing. I'm used to kind of talking about factual information. I've been here for 30 years. I'm leaving. You looked at me and you said, look around. Tell me how you feel. And I was not prepared for that, Sean Lewis. And I was just there to say, hey, man, this is great. I'm retiring and, I've loved my career. But then you made me stop and feel the feels, what in that moment I wasn't even prepared to do. And to this day, that story is just near and dear to my heart because you told it so well. And so, you really are an amazing storyteller. That was just one example that I was a benefactor of. But what are the essential ingredients for turning a standard news story into or news report into a story that sticks with people?
So this is what I tell my colleagues, and I tell other reporters if they ask, is that because we live in this unlimited channel universe now, we need to be better. We need to be memorable. We need to be the reason why people tune in and watch. And that has to do with a video. That has to do with the interviews you do. That has to do with words matter. It's about the words. And I love to write. I love to, pl- lack of a better word, play with words, right? I like how it sounds together. I like being able to take the beginning of a story and kind of weave it all the way through to the end by just these little handshakes
Yeah.
between different segments of that same story, right?
Yeah.
So if you're watching it, and I kind of did this as a trick earlier on in my career because producers are famous for saying, okay, well, it's a minute 52. We need it to be a minute 50. So you need to cut out 2 seconds. I've gotten into fights about 5 seconds before. It's ridiculous. If anyone else thinking about 5 seconds and getting into a fight about it, whatever, it's like 3 breaths, right? But I kind of developed kind of self-preservation, the storytelling technique, this writing technique, to be able to string it all together. So when they said, oh, we need it to be shorter, and then I would look at him and say, all right, well, then tell me where. And there's no like real place to be able to cut it where it flows as nicely once you cut something. There was one executive producer. She's gone now, so I can talk about this. She was like she's famous for just whatever it was. She wanted like 30 seconds taken out. Whatever it was, it could have been a 35-second story. I need 30 seconds taken out, no matter what. So I would write specific things into a story that I never wanted it to be in there, never intended for it to be in there. So when she said take 30 seconds out, I'm like, fine, good. We'll take this part out. How's that? She goes,
You planted
great.
Easter eggs. You literally
Yeah.
planted Easter eggs that you could remove. That is so manipulative, and I absolutely love it. So
You have to play the game.
that's so interesting because it's a storyboard. I have to tell you, you may not know this, but I now work for Wink News in Southwest Florida.
Yeah,
I
I
am
know Wink.
employed by
Yeah.
them. Okay. So they called me and I am their safety and security expert. So I get to be on the stories with them. They call me anything law enforcement related. I
Mhm.
go on camera. I've got to spend some time in the newsroom, even at the anchor desk, live with them. So I'm really getting to see how the sausage is made. And that gives me such a interesting perspective that I didn't realize. What you just said though about stringing a story together and how there are different parts of that storyboard. I don't think people realize what goes on behind the scenes of a story, the writing, the producing. You don't just walk up to people, throw a microphone in their face and say, tell me what happened. There is so much more to it to make it engaging, dynamic, and personal. And these packages that are churned out, because I know the industry term
You're
now,
very good at
packages.
it now.
Yes.
You're like right there with all
I'm
this
coming after your
terminology.
job, Sean Lewis. I'm coming after
Come
your
get it.
job now.
Come get
Yeah.
it. You have
So
to move
it's just,
back up to Chicago though.
I secretly want to come. I secretly do. I'm gonna buy a place there. I'm gonna buy a place right by you. We're gonna be neighbors
The
just because I
place
want to be near.
downstairs is for sale. Go for it.
All right. Okay. All right. Add to cart. But anyway, all of that to say is I don't think people realize how much happens behind the scenes. And
Yeah.
also, news consumption has changed so much. So,
So
how do
much.
you adapt your storytelling for an audience that is constantly distracted by social media and short attention spans?
So I just had this conversation with my boss not 2 weeks ago. We were talking in his office and we were talking about how to adapt because WGN right now is like taking clips from our newscasts and putting them on TikTok and putting them on Instagram and putting them on different social media platforms. And I said, that's not the way that people watch news on, like, for example, we'll say TikTok, right? It's not the way they watch it. They have like a clip of something that's green screen behind them, and then they're just kind of talking about, hey, this, blah, 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 and they're talking about what's going on in this article that's behind them, right? And they're kind of giving a 1 minute summary of it. And that's the way news is now seen in a much less traditional form than what we've been used to over the last maybe 60 years. So, I mean, you're going to probably see a lot more of that. It's interesting, though, because you have a lot of these influencers and content creators who do news specific things and they're talking about something and you'll read through the comments like, I haven't seen this on the news. And I'm like, maybe they're talking about something that's on the news.
Yeah. Right.
turn the news on. Maybe
Yes.
this happened like yesterday or earlier today, and you just happen to see them talking about it before you saw the news. So that, just we are still needed. We are still needed. People say they don't watch the news, which might be true, but they still consume news. They don't watch the 6 o'clock news anymore.
Right. But that's what I was going to ask. Do you think that that is helping or hurting journalism?
It's become this. It hurts my heart, right?
Yeah.
Because I actually went to journalism school and I went through media law classes and what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what's part of the First Amendment, what's not part of the First Amendment, what are you able to do and not do that's part of our norms as an
Yeah.
industry, as journalists, right? What's ethical, what's not.
Mm-hmm.
And now you hear just the media is such a blanket term, right? It's such a blanket term and it's not all the same. Like when someone says the media to me now, I say, well, what are you talking about? Tell me
Right.
more about that. And it ends up being that they saw something that their uncle from Tupelo put on Facebook.
Yeah.
And that to them is the media, right? And I'm like,
Sure.
well, it's different, right?
Yeah.
It's the difference between getting $3 Chuck and a bottle of Dom, right? They're both going to get you to the same place, but they're going to taste different, and you're going to feel differently afterwards, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's not to sound elitist. Anyone can be a journalist, right? You just need a curious mind and the ability to write and to be able to like do justice to what your story or your report is that day. That's all you really need. You need a natural curiosity. And
Yeah.
a lot of people do have that. But you also trust. The reason why I think I have a job is because my brain is formed now in these 30 years or more of being in this industry to be able to kind of see something from multiple angles. We don't say both sides because there's always many more. As you
That's
know, when you
right.
go out to a scene, there's not
Oh,
just two
yes.
sides to anything. There's
I love
multiple
that.
angles to something. And when you watch something about this subject or that subject, you want to be able to know that this person that's telling you this information doesn't have a dog in the game. They don't
Yeah. That they're credible. Sure.
that they're credible, that they are disinterested party, right?
Sure.
They don't have any type of axe to grind.
Yeah.
And that's what
Yeah.
you're looking for when you're
Yes.
going for a credible news story.
Yeah, and
Because
that's
if
what we're
you're, yeah,
missing. And that's what we're missing because I crave traditional journalism where you didn't tell me what to think. You told me what happened, and then I got to choose exactly how I feel about it. But with pundits and talking heads and who owns the station and the messaging and all of that. Yes. And that's why people are distrusting of media,
yeah,
and it's giving those who are there to tell the truth, and that have the competency and character to report on these incidents. It's giving everyone a bad rap and being painted with a broad brush, something that, of course, I know a little bit about in law enforcement as well. It's kind of terrifying when you think about the future of journalism and having people just giving 1 minute snippets on TikTok, and that's how
hmm
people get their news. And yet,
yeah.
that's what we learned. So,
So
yeah,
it's we if you go back and like do a YouTube search for I guess the first cable news outlet, CNN, right? If you go back to do a search of like late 1980s, early 80s CNN and see what that looked like
yeah,
30 years ago compared to now,
yeah,
you're going to see a much different
yeah,
product. And
yeah.
it started to change in the late 90s. There's a news channel that started up in the late 90s and it kind of took off
Yeah.
and it became kind of more entertainment
Mhm.
than news. And
Yeah.
you had personalities talking about events happening under the umbrella of news, but it wasn't news, right? All of a sudden, you had your uncle in Tupelo having an hour-long TV show
That's right.
talking about stuff was going on, but you were getting his take from
Mhm.
what was going on. So all of a sudden, and then you have this evolution of things from there into kind of eating away at traditional news, where you had traditional news going, well, they're getting more viewers. So what are we going to do about that? And then you had all
Right.
of these other cable news outlets kind of fit that mold. So now you
We've got to
have
emulate that. Yes.
talking head, bah, 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 bah,
Yeah.
bah, bah, and they're
Yeah.
talking over one another. And that's, you don't get anything out of that, but it's cheap to produce.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to
You
send a
know,
crew out somewhere.
yeah. Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah. I'm just kind of pining away for the traditional 5 o'clock news where everyone got their story. But all right, I'm gonna shift gears here. But these are really, I think, important questions. Do you make your bed every morning?
I do.
You do?
Yeah.
Have you always done that?
No.
Okay. Huh. Interesting.
So my mom used to make me make my bed.
Hmm.
Actually, there was a time in high school where my grandma had moved in with us and I was sleeping on the floor. Like I'd put cushions out on the floor of the living room. And that's what I slept on for about a year before we figured out a different place for grandma
Hmm.
to stay and for me to stay. But I would have to put away my bed every morning. So that's kind of where it started. But
So funny.
like in my adult life, yeah, I make my bed every day. It's
See, I find it
something.
interesting. There's a psychology behind that, and I'm always curious as people that leave their bed disheveled, and if they're a chaos person or if they're a person that makes their bed every day. And of course, that general who went viral for talking about how to be successful, make your bed because it's the first thing that you
Thing
do
you
of the day
accomplish. Yeah.
that you can check off, right? So I think I already know the answer to this because when we started recording, I saw you eating. But what's your go-to comfort food after a long day of reporting? Is it McDonald's actually?
So no, it's not. But this is I anchored the 6 hour morning show today, and then I got home and I was able to take a little bit of a nap. But then I got up and I had like 20 minutes before I needed to be on with you. So I'm like, what can I get here in less than 20 minutes that I could
Mickey
still?
D's.
So chicken nuggies.
Always reliable. Get the nugs. Get
Yeah,
the nugs.
yeah.
You have a day off with zero obligations. How are you spending it?
I'm probably going to go to the gym.
Mm-hmm. Keep it hot. Keep it hot.
It's a great way for me to kind of, if I have anything on my mind, it kind of like
Mm-hmm.
zones out in there, right? It kind of goes
Mm-hmm.
away. It's not a problem. Maybe go shopping because I love to shop. Maybe go to a museum, depending
Mm-hmm.
on what the day is, right?
Yeah.
Go to a movie.
Yeah.
I used to, before the pandemic, I went to the movies a lot. Like I had one of those memberships where I could just go whenever I wanted to. And that was great. Like if I had 3, 4 hours free, I would just find a movie to go see and go watch it.
I love that. I love that. Movie theaters are coming back though. I think that, COVID, everything is streaming, but there is nothing that compares to walking in that theater with that buttery, salty popcorn
Mm,
and sitting there and then having undivided attention throughout the
mhm.
entire thing. I love that. I crave that. That's amazing. Well, that's
Nicole
awesome.
Kidman made it special for us again.
Oh my God, what is she not in these days? Are you a morning person or are you a night owl? And does your job force you to be something that you're not?
Yeah, my job has totally changed that, right?
Okay.
When I was a weekend anchor in Richmond, I would be on the 11 o'clock news, and I would be up till 3 o'clock in the morning. That's not the case anymore. Like I am in
Yeah.
bed by even on days that I don't have to be up early. I'm in bed by like 9:30.
But what's your actual body clock? If there was nowhere that you had to be ever, what time would you say that you're
I'm still
more
waking
a
up at
morning?
six
You're still
o'clock.
more you're a morning person. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I am awake by 6:15,
Yeah. Okay.
no
Yeah.
matter
On
what.
days with no obligations.
Ev-
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Today I was up at 1:45
You have to get up at 1:45 for the morning show? That's
for the
insane.
4 a.m. start. Yeah, so I got up at 1:45. I got up before my alarm. I just couldn't get to sleep. So then I got up and I kind of got ready and I went in and I was in by like 2:45 this
And you all look so alert and so pretty. You would never know
morning.
that you're sleep deprived, but that's what professionals do,
You turn it on, right?
The show always goes on. That's right. Well, Sean, this has been amazing. Thank you. You are one of the rare journalists who not only reports the news, but actually makes people feel connected to it. So thank you for bringing your insights, your humor, your storytelling, and your genius to this show. And before we wrap, where can people find you? Either obviously on air, WGN TV, online, but where do you want to send them if they want to connect with you?
Anywhere like social media, it's always going to be at Sean Lewis WGN, SeanLewis WGN. That's me.
Awesome. And also on OnlyFans. Just kidding. Okay. Take care. Bye, everybody.